So what exactly are we looking at here? This doesn't really look like anything I've ever seen before, but if you're familiar with Double Fine, that might not surprise you. In my opinion, they're sort of known for making games that are a little bit different than anything else you've seen, so this is par for the course. Founded by Tim Schafer after having worked on a bunch of classic games at LucasArts, Double Fine is probably best known for the Psychonaut games. In general, they usually make games that are wildly creative, have really inventive stories, and tend to underperform financially. So when I saw that this game, Keeper, was the next thing from them, I was really excited. I mean, look at it. You play as a lighthouse. Who wouldn't want to do that? Well, I did, and it was a mixed experience to say the least, so let's talk about it. First and foremost, this is a game that looks like a work of art, and that artwork was a huge part of the initial appeal for me. It just looks so different, and that drew me to Keeper. Like when you are moving through this world, it's clear that everything is 3D, but at the same time, there's always these brush stroke, painterly-like elements on part of the screen, sort of interacting with those 3D elements. It gives the game a kind of dreamlike appeal, a dreamlike feeling, and makes it stand out visually quite a bit. It's really evident in the grass and the trees, but also in things you wouldn't expect, like light rays coming from the lighthouse, and in certain parts of the water as well. That painterly look overlapping with the 3D elements gives the whole game a cool handmade diorama feel, which you don't see in a lot of games, or really any games nowadays, especially modern AAA games. I really can't emphasize enough how beautiful this game looks, and I think you should at least look at it, even if you don't end up playing it. Watch a walkthrough, or just watch the trailer, honestly, or watch this review, maybe, you already are, so might as well. But obviously, games are meant to be played and experienced firsthand through gameplay and story. So I will move on to that stuff too, because a pretty game is just a pretty game if there's nothing else to it. So with the story of Keeper is sadly where it started to lose me a little bit. Not right away, but I'm not sure a strong start is better than a consistent narrative experience. I guess that's really up to you. As this game starts out, we are following a group of birds flying towards a mountain peak. They're going to hibernate or nest or just do something up there, presumably, but the bird in the back of the pack gets attacked by a dark swarm and separated. As it falls, it lands on a long abandoned lighthouse, a remnant of some long gone civilization that we don't get to see. In the real world, this would mean the end. The bird, the prey, is separated and weak, and the dark swarm, the predator, has it surrounded. As it lets out one last desperate scream into a void, a miracle happens. The dormant lighthouse wakes up from its slumber, activating its light after who knows how many years. This causes the swarm to scatter, and just like that, the bird gets to live another day. Immediately curling up on top of the lighthouse, the bird feels safe and attached, and honestly, it only took a minute, but I was attached to this lighthouse too. Things are peaceful for both the bird and the lighthouse, but the bird is still separated from the rest of the flock. So, out of some unknown force of will or latent evolution, the lighthouse starts to move back and forth. It eventually breaks free from its foundation, and from the roots and rubble around it grows legs to bring the bird home. A lighthouse is meant to keep people safe, but in the absence of those people, this lighthouse finally has a new purpose: to return that bird to its flock. It's a strong start, and if it had kept up that steam, I think I would have liked the game a lot more. But like the lighthouse, when it's getting used to its legs for the first time, the story starts to shamble a little bit along the way. As we work our way through this world, slowly going upwards, we're diverted to little side activities to do very simple puzzles that, in my opinion, don't really add much to what is essentially a walking simulator game. Most of these puzzles involve shining your light on certain objects to move or reveal paths. It's not complicated, but Keeper does add a little variety by having you manipulate time by shining lights on special stones, in the beginning at least. And while that sounds cool, it still is just shining a light on something. Even if that path is from the past or the future, it doesn't really change the actual experience in my eyes. You are also able to use your bird friend to activate switches, which does do a little bit to make the game feel a little more involved, but not much. And I do think that's one of the main problems with this game. I just didn't feel involved for a big chunk of it. It feels a little padded out, moving you from area to area, introducing you to a bunch of cool ideas along the way. For me, that made me feel like you never really get to delve into any of those ideas or use them together in any cohesive way. When it comes to the puzzles, everything is pretty surface level and no two mechanics ever touch. But I'll get back to that in a second. I want to talk about the story just a little bit longer. So, getting back to the story, we've gone through most of these puzzles and we're working our way up the mountain. We've manipulated time to make paths reappear and we're finally nearing the peak. We should be close to the end of the game at this point. I didn't mention it, but we even saved another bird along the way. It's an egg at this point, but there's a bird in there. As we get towards the top, the wind grows stronger, and no matter how hard you fight against it, the lighthouse tips over the edge and falls back to the bottom, right near the shore. Basically back where we started, and we're separated from the birds too. At this point, we're halfway through the game. It's also at this point that we see some time pass, and eventually the lighthouse takes on a new form somehow. We still have our lighthouse beacon, the light that's shining that you use to interact with most things in the game, but we just also evolved into a boat. I think this is the point where I got a little disappointed in the story aspect of this game. When we sprouted the legs in the beginning, it felt like a miracle of nature. You know, it was the inciting factor that starts the game, so you can sort of take it with a grain of salt. But the second time around, it just feels convenient. There's no reasoning for it, and I think it was so frustrating because I immediately thought it would have been way more believable if the bird had stayed with us and tried to put us back together, accidentally making us into a boat or using the parts of us that were left to make us into something new. We're already bonded with that character, so it would have just shown the strength of that bond. That would have worked perfectly for me, because even though we are separated from the bird, we are reunited almost immediately. So there's no gameplay reason why the story couldn't have done this, and it would have flowed a lot better in my opinion. I'm not trying to review a game that doesn't exist as I explain what I think should have happened, you know? I'm not trying to talk about this scenario for no reason. I just want to illustrate what could have been done to make some of the things in this game feel a bit more earned or even more cohesive. As it stands, this is the point where it started to feel like anything can happen just to move the game along, and I don't think it needed to be that way. Now, as we move along the water as a boat, because we're a boat now, we really start to come across the source of the swarm from the beginning of the game. It turns out there's some sort of dark infection destroying this island we're on. Maybe it killed the people on it too. It's unclear, but this is what's going on right now. This infection is destroying the island, and in order to get to the peak, we have to get rid of it as well. That's the new goal, in addition to getting to the peak. This mostly involves more puzzles that, to Keeper's credit, do get a little more complicated and a little bit bigger in scope as well, as we're dealing with tendrils of this infection-like substance, and we're trying to destroy it with different bombs and light puzzles in order to continue along our path. In any case, we move through the waters around the island and are rushed along currents until we are nearing higher ground, before once again being broken, separated from the birds, and thrust into the core of the island, into another separate segment of the game. And at this point, we don't really turn into anything. We're all alone. We're only the rolling lighthouse beacon at this point, and it's surrounded by the dark virus that is infecting the island. Luckily, we can still roll around, and we are able to work our way through, eventually defeating the virus by barreling through it like a runaway tire and being reunited with the birds near the peak of the island. There is a boss fight at this point too, but it's not really anything special. You just activate a bunch of beacons, and you eventually beat the boss. It's I don't know, pretty mindless in my opinion. I just had to hold the forward key on my keyboard, and that was about it. That was the whole fight. After being reunited with the birds, we are back to where we were when we fell the first time, right before we made it to the peak. And along the way, we somehow get our boat body back, now with wings and the legs to run up the mountain and finally make it to the top. This stuff just sort of sprouts from our body. You know, it's not taken from any other materials. Doesn't really feel earned to me, but we'll push that aside. Waiting at the top of the mountain are more birds. We saw them from the beginning in a protected sanctuary, safe from the realities of the world. We are finally safe and reunited, but sadly, birds don't stay in one place forever. So right when we get up there, it's time for these birds to leave, the ones that we've come to know throughout the game, along with the flock they were separated from. We've reunited our birds with their flock, and even though we have wings now too, we can't go with them. This is where we say goodbye to them. It's bittersweet. I don't know if it's necessarily a bad ending. It's not one that I enjoyed, but I can also see why that makes sense narratively, I guess. The birds have to go back to their kind. But in any case, it's not quite the end of the game. There's a little bit more. From here, we go forward and upwards even further to the very peak of the island where a great stone eye is. After a short mini game and a truly trippy experience, we merge with the island, becoming the world we had explored throughout the game. And that's where it ends. Yeah, so while the ending of the game is a cool visual, it left me feeling pretty empty. All this time it seemed like we were exploring and trying to get these birds back to the peak of the island, and then halfway in we were saving the island from some sort of infection and then melding with it. It just feels a little disjointed, like a ton of ideas were thrown at the game even if it didn't work, even if they would work better as separate games, and Double Fine just mashed it all together anyway. never blending anything together, but trying to connect everything one after another. Kind of like those puzzles and game mechanics I mentioned earlier. All throughout this game, you're solving small puzzles that are introducing new things, but whenever the next thing is thrown into the mix, it's like the last thing doesn't matter anymore. It felt like a huge missed opportunity to me. In the beginning, you're using your light to grow plants in order to collect items to open up a new path. After that, you're shining lights on stones to mess with time and change layouts of rooms in order to move through these puzzles and get to the next area. And after that, you're doing some light platforming with floating rocks and platforms. There's a bunch of cool stuff, a bunch of cool ideas, but all these concepts and ideas never interact with each other or become more deep than how they're initially shown. And I can't help but wonder what could have been. Why not use your light to grow fruit to weigh down switches? Why not activate new paths with the time manipulation mechanic for the platforming section? And then go further with that idea. Make the activated time platforms be on a timer so you have a sense of urgency, so you have to like practice to get through the level. I don't know, those are just some ideas off the dome, but I feel like if I could come up with ways to make these ideas more intertwined, then a game studio as lauded as Double Fine can probably do an even better idea. You know, they have all the building blocks there, they just have to let them touch and like interact. I don't know, a lot of this game just had me wondering what could have been and how much was left on the cutting room floor, which I think is exactly the opposite feeling you want from something like this. So, with all that being said, should you go out and play Keeper? Personally, I think if you have Game Pass, then it's worth checking it out because it's free for you, but beyond that, I don't know. Keeper is a short game, but with its pacing and how everything feels so separated, it ended up feeling a lot longer, maybe to its detriment. I personally was so excited for this game when I first saw it. I thought the trailer looked cool, I thought it looked beautiful, but I'm not gonna go running to tell my friends to play it, and I'm not gonna tell you guys to either. It's worth a look, and if you thought this looked worth your time, then it will be. But if you're anything like me, you might be better looking from a distance and passing on this one. Now I could talk about this game forever, but I also want to hear what you guys think. What you guys have to say. Have you played Keeper, or had you not even heard about it till now? That is one thing that I noticed. It really feels like this one fell off the radar right away. If you did play this, do you guys like it or no? I would love to hear any and all comments down below, especially since I felt so conflicted about this game. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all in the next video in a couple weeks. Bye.